I am Bruce Murphy, president of Nicholls State University, and I am here to introduce the presenter this morning. So this morning, our presenter will be the Vice President for University Advancement, Dr. Neil Weaver. And Dr. Weaver is relatively new here, but in a short time he has rapidly gained a grasp of the institution, and he is one of the key players on the senior leadership team. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Neil Weaver.
Thank you. Not too long ago, I went to a birthday party for our oldest alum. She was 104. It's pretty old. And I had the opportunity to meet her daughter. And you can imagine if you're 104, your daughter, generally about 80 years old, so she was no spring chicken. But she asked me, what do you do? What is your title? I said, well, I'm the Vice President for University Advancement. And she looked at me the way most people look at me when they hear that title. And my normal response is, well, that's a little vague, but let me explain to you what it is. And so I started to say, it's a little, and she stopped me and she said, pretentious? Yes, ma'am. Very pretentious. So I always remember that and try, when I have the opportunity, to not be as pretentious as she thinks I might have been. And one of the things that we wanted to talk about today, and one of the things that I think would be a little pretentious, would be for me to stand up here and tell you what we think is going to happen, or what we know is going to happen, or what the legislature is going to do. We just simply don't know right now. We don't even know what the governor's proposed budget will be yet. So there are a lot of things up in the air. And if you came today to find out exactly where the cuts were going to be and how big they're going to be and what's going to happen to the state of Louisiana, that's not exactly what we're going to talk about today. What we are going to talk about today is perspective and perception. You know, President Murphy said I've only been here for a short time. Well, my perception is every time that we play LSU in baseball, we win. It's not a big deal. It happens every time. Okay? So the reality is the way I see things and the way you see things and the way that the public sees things and the way the legislature sees things can all be very different. So one of the things we want to do today is to start to build a common perception of what the university is, where we're going, and how we play into where Louisiana is going. So forward together. Starts with our vision statement to be the intellectual, economic, and cultural heart of the Bayou region. That's what we want to be. That's what we believe we are and we should be. So who are we? Let's start with the basics. Our enrollment, 6,300. The 4 months that I've been here, I've been told by a lot of people, when I say I'm at Nicholls State University or I talk to people about where I'm going, they say, oh yeah, little old Nicholls down there, that little school. Okay, look, I lived and grew up in Oklahoma. There are six regional universities, public regional universities in the state of Oklahoma that wish they were as big as Nicholls State University. Okay? And the difference between Oklahoma and Louisiana is about 200,000 people. So we're about the same size state. So we are not just a little bitty, tiny old Nicholls State University down there in the bayou. Okay? One thing I do want to point out, 272 transfer students. We're gonna go back to that in a little while, so remember that number. The other one is 66% of our students are first in their family, first generation to go to college. Again, just remember that number. We're going to get back to that in a little bit. Again, this is a little bit more of who we are. One thing that you'll see is that we've graduated more students last year than we ever have before. Let me tell you, we can solve our enrollment problem if we just stop graduating so many students. You could slow down the process a little bit. course, we don't want to do that, but it is a sign that we're doing a good job. What we need to do is have more inputs. This should not be a surprise to anybody. The top majors at the university, this is a typical regional university thing. The good news is we do these things incredibly well, and that's good. But this is not necessarily unique or special. It's a normal function of a regional university. The next slide, though, this talks about our relationship to the area. And beyond those bread and butter types of things that are shown on the previous slide, this is exactly the kind of behavior that the state needs from us, that the region needs from us. We have to continue to develop these programs and look for other ways to uniquely connect ourselves to the economy of this region, because that's where growth will come from. Quality is an issue we will not shy away from. It is not something that we can ignore, and we have to maintain our commitment to the highest level of quality no matter what happens anywhere else. And I think that happens. I think that's happened here at this institution over the last 68 years of its existence. And I think all of us are committed to making sure that no matter what happens, we stay as committed to our quality as possible. Obviously, the accreditations, we have an accreditation visit coming up, the university accreditation in 2016. We also have 14 accreditations that look at individual programs and departments across campus and all verify our quality. And that's what they're for. We also have 56 endowed positions here at the university. That's about 20% of our faculty population. That's a high number of endowed faculty positions. And that means that 20% of our faculty have resources to continue to do things beyond what their normal salary would provide. Additional research, additional scholarship, engaging students in behaviors beyond the normal go to the classroom and learn what's being taught. 20% of our faculty, that is a very high number. Again, from my perspective, I've lived in Texas, worked in Oklahoma. None of the schools have this resources that are available here. So we should be proud of that, and it's a symbol of our quality. Our assets, we have a beautiful campus. I've been really blown away by how pretty the campus is, how nice a lot of the facilities are, and the work that's being done to make those facilities even better. One thing about our assets that I think we need to understand is they really define who we are. We are a residential campus that's designed to help our students both mentally, physically, and spiritually, to improve their experience in all of those areas. And we have the facilities to do all of those things. And that's why we're here. You won't find what we have at the University of Phoenix. That's not who they were designed to be. So these buildings, these assets that we have, they define our purpose. They define who we are, and we need to be committed to that and understand the role that we play in today's society. One thing that we like to look at, and we compare ourselves to other institutions to make sure that what we're doing meets the expectations that people should have of us. The chart on the left shows state funding for peer institutions. When I talk about peer institutions, I'm not talking about Louisiana institutions. I'm talking about like-type institutions across the country. So schools about our size, with similar missions, that serve similar types of regions, that's what we're looking at. We didn't pick these peer institutions. Our Board of Regents picked these peer institutions for us. Okay, so these comparisons we believe are valid. On the left, you see that the state input into our budget has been shrinking compared to our peer institutions. The chart on the right shows our graduation rate. The red line there indicates we're outperforming our peer institutions even as our funding continues to decrease. So we're doing a tremendous job. And if I put the chart up there for retention, it would look very similar. We're outperforming our peers in retention as well. So we continue to do the things that drive the outcomes that people want from us. And we should be very proud of that. So what's the challenge? The challenge clearly is to maintain quality and to increase student success in an environment where resources are becoming more and more difficult to deal with. I've heard this described as the race to the bottom. Guess what? We're winning. Louisiana's getting there first. I've worked in higher education for about 25 years. In Oklahoma and in Texas and now in Louisiana. About 20 of those years, we have been cutting state funding for higher education. Okay, this is not a new phenomenon across the country. This is a relatively normal progression, unfortunately. Now, I will say that Louisiana has managed to squeeze that progression that's taken 25 years in other states into about a 6-year window. Because where Louisiana was at 63% in 2007 and 8, Texas was at about 35% then. Okay, so this is not an unusual occurrence, but it's been done in a very different way here in Louisiana. Now the caution that I will give you is that we're never going back there. We'll never go back to 62%. What we hope is that we've reached the end of the cutting. If we stop the cutting, then we'll be in line with the rest of the country. What we hope that we don't see is that number continue to go down to 25%. That would be beyond what we expect to see happen anywhere else in the country. And that's what's going to be discussed over the next 4 or 5 months. So if we believe that that's the future we have financially, that means it's time for us to step up and take control of the future that we want to have for this institution. And I can tell you it's not going to be the governor's choice what happens to Nicholls. It's not going to be the legislature's choice what happens to Nicholls. It's going to be ours. We have to understand the reality that we're faced with, and we have to take control of what we want the future to be. And one of the things that we have to do is we have to grow ourselves out of the financial trouble we're in. And so our goal is to get to 8,000 students. These 2 pies represent what's happened in our marketplace, the 8-parish region that we generally would call our service area, over the last 5 years. The bad news, we've lost some market share. All 4-year schools have lost market share. More students are choosing not to go to 4-year schools than were before. Now they're choosing 2-year schools at a higher rate. The good news, the pie on the right, it's growing. We are one of the few places in the country where the number of high school graduates over the next 5 and 10 years is actually going to be higher than it is now. So the marketplace is going to grow. And our job now is to find a way to capture, to not lose any more market share, maybe to capture a little of that back. But I want you to understand, our competition is not necessarily LSU or Lafayette or Southeastern. Our competition is the 2-year schools that are in our backyard and those students who choose not to go at all, because there's more of them than there are that choose to go total. And so we have an opportunity to grow. So you say 8,000, that's a big number. How do we get there? Well, here's how we get there. There is a way to get to 8,000. We didn't just make it up. We have potential to grow. We have avenues that get us to the 8,000 mark. And so what we have to do is get ourselves in order, take control of our attitude, take control of our behaviors, understand that the market has the potential to get us where we want to go, and we have to look at where we invest our resources to make sure that we get there. You know, I said to remember that transfer number, 272 students transferred to Nicholls. If more students are choosing two-year schools in a population of increasing number of students going to higher education, we ought to be able to grow the 272 to 472. And so that's an opportunity for us. But we have to change our thinking. Yes, they're competitors with us at the beginning, but once those students choose to go to a two-year school, we ought to be talking to them every day. We want you to come here to finish your four-year degree. About 80% of students who go to a two-year school say they want a four-year degree. About 30% actually do it. So there's an opportunity there of people who believe that they want to, but for some reason, in the 2 years they're there, they lose that. They lose sight of that. We need to make sure they don't lose sight of that. So I wanted to bring that up because it's something that we can focus on. All right, here's another one of the factors that we believe we need to control so that we can control our future. Look, I don't have to tell you what this chart, how to read this chart. Tuition goes up, enrollment goes down. Right? Any product in the world, the price goes up, you sell fewer of them. That's pretty basic. So we have to find ways to control our cost increases. Because from a student perspective, from a family perspective, they're starting to ask the question, and you've probably heard it, is a college education worth it? And if they have to go into debt to get it, it may not be as worth it to them as they used to think it was. And so we have to do our part to control this cost. So we're looking for ideas. We need ideas that do several things for us. We don't need to find ways to save a couple of pennies. We need to find ways to help the institution change to a new reality, the new financial reality that we find ourselves in. So we're looking for ideas that give us a market advantage, that help our students achieve the learning objectives that we have for them, that allows the students to be more successful. And there are ideas out there that do all of those things. One idea can accomplish all of those things. Those are the things that are going to make us more attractive to students, that are going to allow students to stay here and finish their degrees here. And if they stay here and they finish here, that's good for us from the state. Whatever money the state gives us, even if it's cut, we get a bigger share if we're doing those two things better than anybody else. So we need your ideas. Okay, and those are on the screen simply because we have a group have sat around and we've thrown out some crazy, wild ideas. We need more of them. So if you have ideas that are going to help us, we hope you put them on the list. Okay? Because those all need to be discussed on a campus-wide basis. That's where we're going to need to go. So the question is it worth it? Let me tell you a brief story. We've got a little time. There's a guy that I knew. He grew up in a little town in Lavaca, Arkansas. He was a Native American. Nobody in his family had ever gone to college. But he was a really good athlete. And he could run and jump. He was amazing. He ends up getting an opportunity to go to East Central University in Ada, Oklahoma. You're talking about a little school in a podunk little town. But he took it. That's where he went. He played basketball, football, and ran track at East Central University. And he got a college degree. Met his wife. He got a job working for the post office, and he ran a train, a mail car on the train from McAllister to Ada for, 35 years, 40 years, something like that. He had two boys. Both of those boys ended up going to college. Both of those boys ended up getting master's degrees. Both of them had a life better than their father. One of those boys, who was an engineer, had three boys. All three of those boys went to college. All three of those boys earned master's degrees. One of those boys earned a PhD. All three of those boys had a better life than their father. And now one of those boys, the one with the PhD, the smartest and the best looking of the three, has three boys. And all three of those boys are in college. And I certainly hope that all three of those boys will do better than their father. So what started out as an opportunity for a young man in Lavaca, Arkansas, a Native American who had no prospect of going anywhere, simply because he liked to play basketball and run track, he got to go to college. And it changed not only his life, it changed every generation of his family's life beyond that. And now we're 4 generations in. And things are better and have gotten better each time. So is it worth it? We have 66% of our students come to us in their first generation. Still, in today's world, 66% of 1,200 and something freshmen that come here are the first in their family. You don't think this makes a difference? If we can change their families' lives for 4, 5, 10 generations, we make a difference. And is it worth the investment in this generation to make that happen? Absolutely. Now the question is, who has to make the investment? This chart shows you that if you go to college and you earn a degree, you make more money than if you don't. It's not earth-shattering. We kind of all believe that to be true. The numbers indicate that it's true. And let me tell you, in the 90s, we did a dang good job telling this story. We needed more students to go to college in the 90s. Everybody said we need to increase the number of people in our population that have a college degree. Every state was talking about it, the country was talking about it, and guess what? We did it. But you know what the legislature said? We did such a good job telling the story. All the legislatures across the country said, well, you know, if the person is going to get all the benefit, maybe we shouldn't put in so much money. So we did such a good job, we started this trend of declining state investment because we made the case that the individual was the recipient of all the benefit. Well, guess what? We need to change our story a little bit now. While that's not untrue, this is also true. The benefit is not just for the individual. The benefit is for all the people. Look, this chart shows you that as more people earn a degree, the median household income of people in the state goes up. Not the median income for just the people that earn a degree. The median income for all people in the state goes up as more people earn a degree. So who benefits? Everyone. And I want to point something out. See that number way up here? I got a pointer. Let's see if I can make it work. That number right there, see that one? That's Maryland. Okay? Remember Maryland. So what is the benefit to Louisiana if they invest in higher education? Okay. This is the increase in tuition over the last 5 or 6 years. Louisiana's up here. Right there. Remember I showed you Maryland? Where do you think Maryland is? Right there. Right there. There's a direct correlation. So our perspective as a state needs to be that this is a good investment for all of us. There is no doubt that when we make higher education available, everyone, not just the individual who gets the education, everyone in the state benefits. This chart reflects what's happening. Median incomes across the country have stayed relatively flat. The cost of higher education, as we've shown, has gone up. That's not just in Louisiana, it's across the country. And so we've all heard about the gap. the debt, the student loan debt that people are taking on to get a higher education. We have to be aware of this. That's why tuition increases are so important. We have to hold the line. It's because the higher education is becoming out of reach for far too many people. Far too many people. And so this is what we need to be talking to the legislature about. This is what our communities need to be talking about, is we cannot continue down this path because degree attainment is the way to the future that we want to have. All right. States that have cut the most over the last 5 years, I think this is. Guess where we are? Now look, I told you before, Louisiana has squeezed about 25 years of cutting into about 6 years. So this is not, I mean, this reflects that. And again, my perspective, as I mentioned, I've been here for 4 months. I think we beat LSU all the time. So it's pretty simple for me to say this is normal. And I understand that for some of you who have been here through it all, it has been an incredibly painful, difficult time. And I don't want to minimize that in any way. What we have to understand, however, is this is reality. And it is relatively normal across the country. Other states have done this. We have to figure out how we operate in this environment. What we hope, though, is that the cutting has stopped. As you can see on this chart, as every pendulum swings, it does start to swing back the other way at some point in time. And for the majority of the states in our country, the pendulum has stopped swinging to the cutting side, and it started to swing back to the, oh, by the way, we probably ought to invest some in our higher education. But not in Louisiana. Oops. You can see we are, it's like Price is Right. What did that game with it? This is where we are. So this is the conversation that our communities need to be having, that our campus needs to be having, that our legislature needs to be having. And I think you're starting to hear some of this discussion. That, people are standing up saying, wait a second, we've done too much, and what's being proposed is far beyond what any reasonable person would want to do to higher education or to our future. Okay, there is some discussion that oil is driving this decline in state funding and that it's the reason for the problem. Okay, so here are the top 10, here are the states, and you can see we're at the top, right? The states that have cut the most. Let's look at the top 10 oil states. They're not all at the top. So if oil's the problem, we should all be bunched at the top, right? But guess what? Look at the bottom 4. The 4 states who have done either the least cutting or the most investing are all 4 oil states. So this is not an oil issue. This is a perspective issue. This is how much do we believe in affordable, accessible, relative, high-quality, public higher education. This is the conversation that we are going to be having in our community. This is the conversation that higher education is having all across the state. And it's important for us on this campus to understand that we're all in this together. Any more cuts here are a bad idea. And we can stand around and we can point at each other and say, my program's great, but yours maybe not so great, so if somebody's going to get cut, it's got to be you. But that doesn't do us any good. That doesn't do this campus any good. I told you it would be pretentious for me to stand up here and tell you what's going to happen in the legislature, to tell you what's going to happen in the next 4 months. But I'm fairly confident. I'm very confident. I'm going to be a little pretentious. Nichols isn't going anywhere. We have 6,300 students. We are not a small institution. We have great quality all across the board. One of the things that I like about my job so much is I get to go across campus. I work with faculty and departments and leaders all across the campus from every discipline in every area. And I can tell you there's quality everywhere. I've been blown away by the quality I have seen and the stories I have heard. Our area of the state is growing more than any other area of the state. The economy of this state is based in this region. I would make the case that there is no school more important to the future of Louisiana than Nicholls State University. So don't think about whether or not we're going to be saved. The question is, how much are you going to invest in your future? Because if you're going to, this is the place to do it. And that's the story that we want to share with you. It's the story we want you to share in your social circles. And it's the story that we are going to try to encourage all of the people who believe in Nicholls and believe in our community to stand up and say with us. So when the legislature meets and they start talking and the stories start coming out, we're going to ask you to do what we think is best, and that's to stand up and say, Nicholls is worth the investment. Our students are worth the investment. What we do here is better than no investment. And so that's where we're headed. And I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you this morning. I know you have other things to do, but I'll be more than happy, and I know the president will come up as well and answer any questions that you might have. So thank you all very much. They're stunned.
Well, thanks a lot, Dr. Weaver. Are there anybody have any questions that we might want to address? I know that, as Dr. Weaver said at the beginning, you may have been thinking that, we're going to talk about stuff, but there is no stuff to talk about yet. The governor's budget comes out, I believe, on Friday. Then the legislature will work with that budget for a while. They will make proposals about what to do, how to approach it, and so forth. And then a budget will ultimately, I can guarantee you that ultimately a budget will be formed, and then we will have more concrete things to talk about. I think that it's really important to focus on the points that Dr. Weaver made, and that is, this is about investment in the future. We have cut for the last 6 or 7 years in this state. We have cut pretty well down to the bone, cut pretty well down to the essentials, and we think we're at a point where we are offering excellent education in a very efficient way. And the conversation in the state of Louisiana has to be, how many fewer college graduates do you want? And I'm sure most people would say, we don't want any fewer, we want more, we need more. We know that college graduates earn more, so over the course of a lifetime, they're going to pay more back to the state in terms of tax revenues. They're going to be in prison less than non-college graduates. They're going to use health care less than non-college graduates. They're going to be more active in their communities than non-college graduates. They're going to contribute to philanthropic needs more than non-college graduates. All of those things are good. I think all of those things make a absolutely solid case that higher education is a public good. And so public goods are generally handled in the public sphere the way that we have done so in the past, and we will hopefully continue in the future. I think that's where the discussion has to be. So when people ask me, what are you going to cut or what's going to happen, I turn around and say, tell me how many fewer college graduates do we want? We want to keep the quality we have. We want to increase the enrollment that we have. And as Dr. Weaver said, we want to grow that enrollment. We think that we can do that. We think that we can serve more students, not fewer. So, get off my soapbox and see if anybody has a question. Yes?
I guess probably y'all have seen, we've all probably looked at LSU's website that they've got about the budget cuts. And they've been doing a pretty big, publicity campaign trying to make people in the state aware of what potential impact the cuts could have. So they're going ahead and making projections about statewide cuts and how many jobs they think it will affect. And their projection right now is that if the budget cuts hold, they're projecting 1,400 faculty and staff cuts across the state. And
some of you this story already, but right after we had the Faculty Institute and some of this talk about the cuts was coming out, I had a reporter from the Nicholls come into my office, and she came in and sat down, and she said, "What are you going to cut?" She didn't say, "Good morning, Mr. President," or "How are you doing?" or "Hi," whatever. She said, "What are you going to cut?" And it kind of shocked me, and I said, I guess I had a flash of brilliance. I said, "Are you from Louisiana?" And she says, "Yes." I said, "Do you think there's going to be hurricanes in Louisiana in the future?" She goes, "Well, yeah." I said, "So which towns should we evacuate right now?" She said, "Well, you don't know. You don't know where they're going to come, when they're going to come, what strength they're going to come." And so I think that what my colleague Dr. Alexander did was probably very, very wise. What he did was he said, let's take that worst case scenario, let's play that out, and we're in a position of strength as the flagship of this state, and we can say these things. So this is what it would be. I think that I don't think that King Alexander thinks that the cuts will be at the level that he's projected. I think what he's doing, he's saying if a Category 7 hurricane hit New Orleans, it would probably hurt it. I think that's what he's saying. Okay, I don't know if that answers the question exactly, but we can do you can play out a million different scenarios, but we don't know what it is. I'll tell you one thing though. It may be a slightly more serious response to your question. Our legislators right now are looking at ways that they can address whatever the budget comes in at. So first of all, we don't know what the budget's going to look like when the governor submits it. And then I don't have it at the top of my head now, but I know there are about 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 very specific things that different legislators are looking at. And I think that the legislators get it, that they understand that they don't want higher education to have a demise, and I think that it's very important. The other part of that is I don't blame the legislators, and I don't blame the governor. I took criticism for saying I don't blame the governor, but I don't blame the governor. If the people of the state of Louisiana recognize some of the things we've talked about in this particular presentation and stand up for higher education, I don't know a legislator on earth that will ignore 237,000 voters who happen to be students in this system, or the tens of thousands of employees that happen to be in this system. They respond, legislators respond to what the people say. And if the people say, "Oh, well, I guess it's a cut, I guess we'll have to take it," then I guess we'll have to take it. But if the people stand up for higher education and say, "No, we want to have more education in this state, not less," then I guarantee you that all of our elected officials will take note of that. And we are going to be actively doing that once we see what the proposals are and once we can take stands on particular responses. Anybody else? Question? Yes?
I think this is an excellent message, and one that we do need to get out to the public, but just wondering if there's a strategic way that we can do this. I mean, it's great that we got this information, and we'll be able to talk to our groups and friends and people that we know, acquaintances, but how do we strategically get this out to the right people?
Well, the question was, do we have a strategic plan for getting this message out to folks that can influence others? And the answer to that is yes, we do. And we have deliberately been biding our time. In fact, Neil has been kind of holding me back, holding the reins back, and saying, let's wait till the right time. And if you think about it, we want this to, when there are proposals, when there are actions taken, that's when we want the message to hit. We don't want the message to hit too soon. We're getting this out to you earlier because you talk to people at Rouse's, you talk to people in your communities, you talk to people in your clubs and associations, and they're going to ask you, hey, don't you work at Nicholls? Well, what about all these cuts? What's going to happen? And so forth. And the message is clear. We have a strong university. We're going to have a strong university. We're going to deliver high quality education at an affordable rate. And we're going to continue to do that for the people of the state of Louisiana. And by the way, if you want to quote, the simplest one, I go back to my old days of watching Animal House, they said knowledge is good. I'll say education is good, okay? Education is good. Higher education is good. And so we want to make sure that we continue that within this state, because with all of the problems, think about all the problems there are in the state or in the country. We have coastal erosion, we have the economy, we have unemployment, we have all these things. Well, who's going to solve that? When I talk to the student, how many students are here? We have students here? Okay, great. I talk to the students, I say, here we are trying to solve this problem. You guys are going to be the leaders that are going to be solving this problem in the future. So who do you want solving that problem? You will probably want somebody that has spent time to invest in and complete a college education, that knows how to do critical thinking, that knows how to work with other folks, that knows how to be a member of a team, that has some technical background in various fields. That's the problem solvers of the future. We are creating that. We are creating the problem solvers of the future, not the problems of the future. Okay? Thank you. Yes, Representative Richard.
So, okay to say something?
Absolutely.
It's best not to make these comments. I appreciate Dr. Williams said wholeheartedly that tuition is not the answer. I think you see that now. We have a spending problem in the state of Louisiana. And I'll believe that the day I die, we have a spending problem. We can solve it. We had a bill last year that passed unanimously that put $100 million in the budget this year, $100 million. A short-term solution, but we're proving that right now. This governor vetoed it. You mentioned about the economy, everything we're doing to push back, and that's true. Whose congressional district got cut? Ours, right? Who's looking out for us? If we don't, nobody will. My point is, he said the legislature's not at fault, the government's not at fault, we're at fault, the legislature's at fault, because we don't take our job seriously. Okay, now I'm saying that from the bottom of my heart, because we had a bill that passed unanimously, and everybody voted for it, yet we chose not to go back in session to override. We choose not to by secret ballot. How many of you realize we have to vote by secret ballot to go back over our veto? You realize that? You don't, right? Some states have an automatic provision that says when a bill passes a 2/3 vote, you veto, you automatically go into session. To try to override. I think it's very important. We'll do that this year. Is it going to pass? I doubt it. But we have a spending problem in the state of Louisiana. We have too many 4 universities to meet. We can fund them to do it right. Get rid of NGOs, non-government organizations, things like that. We can fund higher ed. We can fund higher ed under what John Kennedy believes, and I believe that. I really do. Okay, I'm saying all that because the governor gets away with what he does because we allow him to do that. We don't take our job seriously enough. I'm saying that one legislator, or your legislator office, this power, but I see it, guys. I see it. We don't take our job seriously enough. If we do that, how many remember the pay raise in 2008? Who remembers the pay raise? No. Did we get a pay raise? Did I get a pay raise? Did I deserve a pay raise? Right? That's not the problem. The problem is we tried to vote ourselves a pay raise in 2008 and make it retroactive to that January while we're in office, okay? Which it passed. And I voted against it. It passed. What happened to it? He finally vetoed it because why? The process works. Just like he's saying, the process works if you get involved. And if we don't get involved, guess what's going to happen? We're going to get lined out somewhere. Somebody's going to get cut. Somebody's got to get cut. Is it the flagship university? Look, I'm a graduate at LSU. If we do away with the flagship university, everybody's problem is solved. Right? $80, $90 million each, that ain't going to happen. But somebody's going to be affected by the cuts. And it's not going to be us that's going to make this decision. It's the government. Because we're going to leave town when the budget's passed. If we haven't passed it, once we leave it, he can design and veto any way he wants. He can make the cuts he needs to make. I'm saying it, do you like me? I don't know. Look at what happened to this area. We lose the construction district. We got all the economy, guys. We supplied half the energy in the state of Louisiana. Look at what we do for jobs. But what happened? We got cut. Our district got cut. We lost it. Plus, we got cut in half in 2 times. So who's worried about making the state difficult? I don't know. But we can't take it for granted. Everything there you say is true. We have a quality university. No way we should be cut at all. No way. Okay? And I'm not going to sit by, I divide and watch. I've got bills trying to pass. To change that, it's going to happen, I don't know. This man's doing his job, he's right. We can support it, but you got to get out there and support it verbally, any way you can. Just like you did when you didn't want me to get a pay raise. You tried to do it. Okay? The process works, if you remember that from 2008. So I'm saying all that, I hate to butt in like that. Everything you said, Dr. Lee, is true. I appreciate the concern. Because you go around too many places in higher ed and want the tuition increase, that's not the answer, John. We don't fund higher ed in the state of Louisiana, we do not fund our state, and that's wrong. Okay, anybody says that's wrong, 30% that's wrong. Should it get back to 50%? You better up to 50%. I disagree with you on that. It should be 50%, at least more. And so we're working at that. We get the right governing base to get that going. But the problem is, we don't do our job in legislature. That's going to call miles to give the governor his power, and he takes it. So I appreciate the comments. I'm sorry, I ran wrong.
Thank you very much. And I think to make the representative's point, we need to help the legislature know what their job is by standing up for higher education. Any other questions? Any other questions? Yes.
I was with another there since 2008. Everything is cut from higher education and hospitals. Why can't we put pressure on our lawmakers to say, okay, we're not just going to cut these two agencies. Why don't we have a call for?
Well, again, that's the how-to. That's the how-to, and I don't want to get into the how-to. That is the legislature's job, to figure out how to do it. It's our job as individuals, as citizens, to stand up and say that we believe in higher education, that that's important to us, that that's at least as important to us as other things. And when I've heard people say, well, we've got a constitution, we've got this law, we've got a thing that's passed before. I spent about 30 years of my life, in uniform and with the government defending a country that believed in democracy, defended a country that said we have a constitution, but wait a minute, drinking used to be against the constitution, then it wasn't. Women didn't used to have the right to vote, and then it did. We can change constitutions if the people say this is what we believe in. If the people say that we believe in higher education, we think we ought to have it. And I don't think the message should be save Nicholls. I really don't. I think the message should be save higher education. Because we know that with the cuts that have been talked about, and who knows, you can't get there by cutting, as Representative Richard said, you can't get there by cutting any. There's only one institution you can cut that would solve that problem, and that's not going to happen. So you can't get there. The only thing you can do with the cuts is to provide less higher education. And I think the people of this state need to say, no, that's not acceptable. We need to provide more higher education. And if that means not doing some other things, or if that means doing something that right now looks like it's a third rail, let it be a third rail. But the people of this state have to come together and say that. We're going to give very similar presentations to the one you just got to other kinds of groups, and we're going to kind of build a crescendo to that as we move through this. And this crisis is a 1 year, so far it's been characterized as a 1 year budget problem. And so it can't be a 1 year fix, okay? That'll happen. I have enough faith in the legislature that they'll come up with something. They'll put something together to work at this. But we need to make a statement about higher education, in general and for the future, and so we don't go through this. Even if we survive this year, that we have to do it all over again next year. We need to solve that. And it's a very important year. I don't have to tell you, in this state, it's a very important election year, and the future is going to be determined for many years to come on what happens this year. And so, what do the people of when you see those numbers, and you see those charts, and the arrows going up and down, and all the good charts we go to the bottom, and all the bad charts we go to the top, you say, wait a minute, is that what we want to do? I understand that somebody's got to be at the top and the bottom, but we don't have to be that way on everyone. So we're gonna build a message, and this is the message, and we want you to take that forward. If you want to be a spokesman and have the slides and go out and present, see the advancement office, and they will help you do that. I mean, if you are a leader in an organization or a spokesman in an organization, you want to do that, we'll arm you with the data that you need. See, Monique is waving her hand frantically. See Monique. Okay, so, is that what you meant by that, or do you have a burning question?
We raised the spending cap in 2008 and spent it surplus, and Bobby didn't inherit it. He's not on TV right now. We had a $1.7 billion surplus when he came in 7 years ago. You remember that? We had to vote, break a 2/3 vote, because the Constitution would not allow us to spend a certain amount of money, which we did. For coastal restoration, we did do that. We did exactly what we said. But do we have the guts to do it? The problem. And that's where the concern is at. The legislation doesn't must be governed, and that's what it's about.
Okay,
Thank you.
no more questions?